When I opened the door, the courtroom was already awake. Not in the sense of alive, more in the sense of ready. Ready to measure you, sort you, judge you. Ready to build big verdicts out of small gestures. The air smelled like paper and cold wood. Somewhere a records cart rattled. Its wheels squealed for a second, as if even metal could get nervous. I walked in uniform. Not pressed and polished like in a recruiting commercial. More like you wear it when you know it has to be more than fabric today. Heads turned. A few seconds of silence. Then, like a small crack in the order, I heard him. My father's laugh. A short, deep laugh. As if this were a play he'd known for years. "So, this is your big entrance?" he said to the person sitting next to him, loud enough for the room to hear. And I felt the heat gather at the back of my neck, not from shame, from memory, because I'd heard that laugh a lot before, when I wanted something, when I claimed something, when I imagined I could contradict him. I kept walking. The fabric of my uniform brushed my thigh. The soft rustle suddenly sounded like a microphone. The benches were full. Spectators, reporters, a few people pretending they were just here by coincidence, and then the ones who truly had to be here. On the right side sat my father, Gregory Stone, a man who'd spent his entire life learning that voice and status are weapons. He wasn't wearing a suit that was too big for him. He was wearing one that belonged to him. Next to him, his attorney. And on the other side, my mother, made small, quiet. Like someone who learned that speaking only opens new wounds. I kept my eyes straight ahead, not at him, not at her, at the judge's bench. Because in that moment there was only one thing I truly cared about. Will someone stand up today? Not in the physical sense, in the moral sense. Because I hadn't come to show myself. I had come to end something. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand why my father laughed, and why that laughter caught in his throat when the judge suddenly stood. My name is Nora Stone. Ironic that I carry the same last name as the man who would most like to laugh me small again today. I'm military police. And before you picture only uniforms and parades, in reality it often means you stand between power and rules, between people who are used to giving orders, and a system that claims no one is above the law. Claims is the right word. Because I grew up in a house where my father was the law, not officially, but practically. He was the man who made decisions before other people even understood there was a decision. He was the man who smiled when he humiliated you. And he was the man who always said, "You need to learn how the world works." What he meant was, "You need to learn how I work." The case that brought us here today was officially a family matter. Custody, child support, a few numbers, a few statutes. But anyone who's ever sat in a courtroom knows, it's never only about numbers. It's about control, and control was my father's element. For months he had put our family through a grinder, not because he had to win. He'd already won. But because he wanted to show that he can win. Over and over, he swapped attorneys like ties. He filed motions that made no sense, except that they cost time. He dragged my mother back to court so often that at some point she started leaving the mail unopened, and he described me, his own daughter, in every filing as unstable, unpredictable, emotional, easily influenced. Words that sound like a diagnosis, but are really just strategy. I read those words and felt something I used to feel often as a child. The urge to defend myself. The urge to prove to him that I'm not what he says. Then I learned something. You don't beat people like that by explaining yourself. You win by changing their stage. And today was a new stage. As I walked down the center aisle, I saw the spectators' eyes slide over my uniform. A few nodded with approval. A few twisted their mouths. And my father? He leaned back, relaxed, as if he'd already planned the ending, as if my uniform were just a costume. "Nora," he said as I passed his row. I didn't stop. "You really went through with this," he continued. "With what?" his attorney asked. My father gestured at me. "She thinks she can make an impression here." Then he laughed again, and I heard something in it that pulled me briefly back into the past, into our kitchen, into the evenings when he looked at my grades. "A B?" he would say and laugh. "Well, almost good." Or the days when I told him I wanted to join the military. He'd laughed. You're too soft." I wasn't soft. I just wasn't like him, and he never forgave me for that. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Everyone stood. The judge entered. Judge Keller. A man in his late 50s, gray at the temples, with a look that said he'd heard too many excuses to be impressed anymore. We sat. I felt the hard bench under me, the uniform pulled slightly at the shoulders, as if reminding me, "You're not just Nora here, you're also a symbol." The judge began. Routine questions, status of the file, motions. My father let his attorney speak. Words like chess moves. I listened and waited. Because I knew my father needs a moment. He can't help it. At some point, he has to show he's dominating. And that moment came faster than I expected. My father's attorney said, "My client believes the other side is using the children's contact as leverage." My mother flinched. I saw her hands, how they clung to a tissue. My father glanced at me and smiled. That smile that says, "Watch me take her apart." Then he raised his hand. "Your Honor," he said. The judge nodded. My father stood, and suddenly he was back in his element. "I just want to put on the record," he began, "that my daughter is sitting here today in uniform to apply pressure. That's intimidating. That's inappropriate." A murmur ran through the courtroom. My father enjoyed it. "She's emotionally involved," he continued. "She isn't objective. She thinks she can use her position to influence things." He turned halfway toward the gallery. "I'm not saying this as her father," he said, and that was exactly the lie. "I'm saying it as someone who knows her." I felt my heart hit once, hard. Not from fear, from clarity. Now. I stood up. Not because I was impulsive, because it was planned. I'd thought it through for weeks. If he attacks me in the room, I don't pretend I'm only family. Then I'm also duty. "Your Honor," I said. The judge looked at me. "You are not a party to this case," he said. "That's true," I answered, "but I'm a witness." My father gave a short laugh. "A witness to what? Her own feelings?" A few people snickered. My father was good at conducting rooms. The judge raised his hand. "Order." I looked at the judge. "I'm requesting that a document be entered into the record," I said. My father went quiet. Not completely, but his smile froze. "Which document?" the judge asked. I opened my folder. The smell of paper mixed with the wood. I pulled out a copy, stamped, dated, signed. "A report pursuant to section," I began. My father lifted his hand. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous." "She's making a scene." The judge looked at him, and in that look there was something my father wasn't used to. Balance. "Mr. Stone," the judge said, "sit down." My father didn't sit. That was his mistake. "You can't," he began. That's when the judge stood up, not halfway, not hesitating. He stood like he'd decided this courtroom was no longer a stage. Chairs squeaked. The air got heavy, and my father fell silent. Because a judge who stands doesn't just move a body, he shifts power. Mr. Stone, Judge Keller said, calm but sharp. In my courtroom, my rules apply. You just publicly accused your daughter of abusing her position. That is a serious allegation, and I am going to look very closely now. My father blinked. I saw him search briefly, for the old reflex, for the laugh, but the judge was standing, and the laugh no longer fit. Ms. Stone, the judge said to me. Hartman, I corrected. A short moment, a name that doesn't belong to him. Ms. Hartman, the judge said. What exactly are you submitting? I handed him the document. The bailiff took it, brought it forward. Judge Keller read. Only a few seconds, but I saw how his brow tightened, just slightly, how he wasn't surprised, more like confirmed. Then he looked up. Mr. Stone, he said. My father lifted his chin. You violated a restraining order against your wife, twice, and there is a report for threats. A ripple of shock. My mother sucked in air. My father laughed, reflexively. That's exaggerated, he said. The judge stayed standing. You're laughing, Judge Keller said. That's noteworthy. My father twisted his mouth. Your Honor, this woman, the judge cut in, is the mother of your children, and you will stop dehumanizing her. The word hit. Dehumanizing. My father shot me a look. There was something new in it, not mockery, anger, and something like uncertainty. Everyone in the room thought that was the climax. A judge puts a man in his place. A daughter shows backbone, applause in their heads. But that was only the surface, because the document I submitted wasn't the only thing. It was just the key. The judge didn't sit. He stayed standing. He kept speaking, and suddenly it no longer sounded like family court. It sounded like consequence. Mr. Stone, he said, you have made multiple false statements in this matter, including about your financial situation and about contacts you attempted to influence. My father went pale. That's an outrage, his attorney said. Judge Keller raised his hand. I have the file. Then he turned to the bailiff. Please call Assistant District Attorney Lane. She's in the building. A sound moved through the room. That particular sound when people realize something is getting bigger. My father straightened. Your Honor, that isn't necessary. The judge looked at him. Yes, he said. It is necessary. And then, almost as an aside, and I also want court security waiting in the hallway. The words were calm, but they landed like weight. My father stared at him. I saw his mouth open, close, open. No words. For the first time. Out in the hallway, you could hear footsteps. Not many, but certain. The bailiff stepped out. My father leaned toward his attorney, whispered. His attorney whispered back. I looked at my mother. She sat there as if she could barely believe that someone had just called her the mother, without mockery. Judge Keller looked over the courtroom. I want to make something clear, he said. This courtroom is not a place to humiliate family members. I see a strategy. I see power games. And I see that you, Mr. Stone, assumed no one would contradict you. He paused. I contradict you. It wasn't a dramatic sentence. That's exactly why it hit. My father shifted on the bench, a small sound of fabric, a sign that he suddenly wasn't sitting comfortably anymore. Assistant District Attorney Lane came in, dark blazer, a binder under her arm. She glanced briefly at Judge Keller, then at my father. She knew him, or rather, she knew his type. What is this about? She asked. Judge Keller pointed to the file. Possible perjury in connection with family court filings, he said. And possible intimidation. My father jumped up. This is absurd. Judge Keller stayed calm. Sit down. My father sat. For the first time, he obeyed, and that was the moment his laughter truly died. Not because he realized he was wrong, but because he understood the game no longer belonged to him. I knew this part was coming. I knew it because weeks earlier I'd done something I never thought possible. I'd reached out to someone my father respects, not out of love, out of fear. Judge Keller had once been a military judge advocate. He'd decided cases that weren't only about money, but about freedom, and he had a reputation. Unbribable, stubborn, unimpressible. I hadn't written to influence him. I'd written because I saw a pattern that was turning dangerous, that my father was using the proceedings to break my mother, and that he was ignoring rules as he did it. I'd attached evidence, not feelings. Evidence. And now the judge was standing, because evidence weighs more than laughter. My father suddenly turned to me. His stare was sharp. "You did this," he hissed. I didn't answer. Not because I was afraid, because I knew. If I speak now, it becomes personal again. And that is his field. I wanted it to stay on the field of the law. The judge said, "Ms. Hartman, sit down. You are not the accused today." I sat, and I felt my knees trembling slightly. Not from weakness, from release, because I'd been speaking to a wall for years. And now, suddenly, someone stood up. The next minutes felt like a different proceeding. No longer, who gets how much, but what actually happened here. Ada Lane asked questions. My father dodged. The judge stopped the evasions. My father tried to regain control. He said things like, "This is a misunderstanding. You don't know the whole story. I only wanted to protect my children." Sentences that, at their core, all mean the same thing. I'm the hero. And if you criticize me, you're unfair. Judge Keller didn't allow it. "Protection is not a free pass," he said. And that sentence cut deeper than any ruling, because it exposed what my father had used for years, the cloak of responsibility, under which he hid violence. When the session broke, my father was in the hallway, 2 officers nearby. Not aggressive. Just present. Presence is the polite form of power. My father came at me. Fast. "You betrayed me," he spat. I looked at him, and in that look there was no hatred, only exhaustion. "No," I said quietly. "I only finally made you visible." He laughed briefly, but it was a broken laugh. "You think you're somebody now?" he said. I answered, "I was always somebody. You just acted like I wasn't." He wanted to say more. Then he heard the footsteps behind him. Ada Lane, the judge. And my father took half a step back. Not from me, from them. And that was new. When we went back into the courtroom, the mood had changed. The spectators whispered differently. The reporters held their pens differently. And my father sat differently. Not smaller, but less certain. This time, Judge Keller sat down. But he looked like he could stand up again at any moment, and that was the message. "I will issue a temporary ruling in this matter today," he said. My father straightened. "And I will also forward a report to the appropriate authorities," he continued, "because there is reason to believe this proceeding has been systematically abused." My father stared at him, and for a moment I saw the child in him, not the vulnerable one, the stubborn one, the one who never learned to accept limits. "You can't do that," he whispered. Judge Keller looked at him. "Yes," he said, "I can." And again it was that sentence, small but final. The ruling went my mother's way, temporary but clear. Visitation terms, protection, and a warning to my father so unmistakable it left no room. When Judge Keller didn't even need to bang a gavel because his voice was enough, my father stood, not because it was required, because he wanted to flee. He walked past me, And in that moment, he said nothing. No laughter. No comment. Just a look, holding everything. Anger. Hurt. And the realization that his daughter is no longer playing on his stage. Outside the building, the air was cold, the sky gray. Cars passed as if nothing had happened. My mother stood next to me. Her hands were shaking. "I thought no one heard me," she said. I looked at her. "He made sure you believed that," I said. She swallowed. "And now?" she asked. I exhaled. "Now the difficult phase begins," I said. "Because people like him can't lose without striking back." She nodded slowly. "And you?" I looked down at my uniform, at the fabric, at what it symbolizes. "I'm ready," I said. And this time it wasn't a pose. It was the result of a judge standing up, because he'd seen what I'd seen for years. That laughter is sometimes just a method, and that a single moment can be enough to reorder an entire family. My father laughed in the courtroom because he thought I was there to make an impression. In the end, the judge stood up. Not because of my uniform, but because of the truth. And that's the point I want to leave you with. When someone laughs at you, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It often only means he's afraid you might be right, and sometimes it only takes one person standing up for the laughter to stop.